Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply, and this video is to go over a task that we've been given by a client. The outline of the task is that the customer requires 2¼ inch long mortise cylinders. Those mortise cylinders need to be polished chrome. Those mortise cylinders need to be in a Schlage F keyway. The mortise cylinders need to have a cam for a Corbin Russwin ML2000 series lock, and those mortise cylinders need to ship tomorrow. 2¼ Schlage F polished chrome ML2000 series cam. Ship tomorrow. Okay, so can you do it? The answer is yes. And in fact, I have it right here. This is the intro to the video that's going to show the production of these cylinders, all the trials and tribulations. This portion, this is a Kaba Ilco 7205. 7205 SX 7205. That's 1¼ inch by Kaba Ilco. The SX means that it is there is no X keyway by Schlage, naturally. It is a C through K keyway. It really should be called a C through G keyway. There are no keyways that are after G. The 7 classic obverse keyways from Schlage are C, CE, E, EF, F, G, FG, 7. On top of that, you're going to have your J. No reason to guess. Stand by. 35. I'm going to pull up my multiplex structure. Okay, then you have H, J, and K. Those are multi-section key blanks. There are no H, J, and K keyways, broachings, and cylinder plugs. Those are only key blanks only that are multi-section key blanks. This is an SX. That means into that plug, it will accept any of the 7 classic obverse. C, CE, E, EF, F, FG, G. Okay? Pulling from stock an 1¼ inch polished chrome F keyway is not going to happen. For this client, I brought in 35101 original Schlage key blanks in an F keyway. Now, what I like about that is when I insert that into the cylinder, there is no play more than normal. Okay? The F has this extra milling on the side that serves to really make it stand better in this multi-purpose keyway, this all-section keyway. Okay? The key works nice. Doesn't, it's not loose in the keyway. Up and down, it's incredibly tight. The Kaba Ilco C blanks, or C keys that came with it, not as tight, but still acceptable. The client, I asked the client if they wanted us to perform key work on the project, and they said no, that the building locksmith would do it. This is going to a project in Manhattan. If you've been to Manhattan, I have a number of times, you're dealing with an area that is incredibly historical in American history, in the sense of George Washington, gave his farewell speech, okay? Alexander Hamilton. Okay, so really the founding fathers spent time in New York, all the way up, let's just say, certainly 200 plus years later. You're dealing with a lot of old architecture. You're dealing with very unique doors that are all but irreplaceable by today's standards. You've got door, what do they need a 2¼ inch length mortise cylinder for? I don't know, a really thick door is what I'm thinking. Or they've got that lock not centered in the door. It's probably a really thick door, which tells me that that door is every bit of 3 inch thick. I mean, every bit, at a minimum. It doesn't have to be, but it could be. So the way that we go about putting together such a project, oh, by the way, I told the client I'd be happy to do any master keying, level key to like, key differently, level 2, master keying, level 3, whatever the case is, total position progression, rotating constant, whatever you want. Client said, no, the building locksmith will rekey them. So what I told him is I would 1-bit them. I would cut the keys to 1. I would combinate the plugs to 1. The good thing is the client can just repunch these. You know, he doesn't have wasted key blanks. Rather than having them O-bitted, I don't like when I can pull the key out of the cylinder plug when I'm rotated. If it was O-bitted, I'd be able to turn that and pull that key right out. Schlage will not even send interchangeable core cylinders O-bitted. It'll be 1-bitted because you have a problem with the control key. You can, you know, basically turn the control, like in large format Yale, you can turn the control key and it will come out in any position. So you're really not sure how you're working that. So having it at least 1-bitted will keep the key retained as you're operating it. And if you don't have knowledge of why the key is coming out all the time, it's hard for you to understand what you're attempting to do by removing the cylinder. So the only way to put this together is to go to a company called Major Manufacturing. There is a link below this video to the product catalog out of the Major Manufacturing full line catalog as it pertains to their MCE-100 Mortise Cylinder Extension Kit, which I have spread out on my desk, and their extensions that come along with it. So they have their drill fixture guide, which I have taken apart because I've just made 3 cylinders with it. And then they have their Mortise, they have their Extenda cylinder kits, is what they're called. And I'm looking at the document, so if you're looking at it now, that'd be good. Drill guide includes, okay, so back to the drill guide. The drill guide includes a holding vise, drill guide plate, and tapping plate. Also included is a number 29 drill bit with a stop and an 832 tap and a tap wrench. The guide is machined from aluminum, and drill tap guides have hardened steel bushings. Okay, here's what the, oh, I put that together backwards. Give me a moment. Do want to have it at least oriented correctly before I show it to you. Not an inexpensive tool, but having used it, I do conclude that you can do it commando. I've done drilling commando, no guide, freehand. It works usually, not always. Sometimes you've got some remachining to do, which I don't like to do at all. I can tell you that this drill guide, if you're going to extend cylinders more than often, at least marginally, buy the drill guide. This guide's got a little bit of use on it. I've run 3 cylinders through it. None the worse for wear. So what you have here is the drill guide itself. This is the drill guide. This is a plate that is screwed on to the holding vise. 2 screws. Okay. If I were to loosen those, that top plate is just simply going to come off. Simple and straightforward. I'm just going to loosen to show you that that comes off. The way that this works is that you're going to, and I'm going to grab a cylinder. Got just a Kaba Ilco, whatever this is, a 7165 maybe. And I'm going to remove the cam, the AR cam, or the 863A cam is what they call it. And I'll show you how the cylinder gets inserted into the fixture. This is my Weeha set of handy screwdrivers. I highly recommend these screwdrivers, these German manufactured screwdrivers. They have a catalog that's 200 pages long. It's 200 pages of variations of high-tech screwdrivers. Why do I like these? Well, why I like them is because I've never broken one. Okay, Very good fitting, very, very high quality. I've never shattered a tip. Also, I can turn it like this and not cause a blister in my palm because that red tip rotates. So I can work the tool and not blister the palm of my hand. So what happens here is in the kit, you're going to get 3 Allen wrenches. Small, medium, and large. The medium is for the bolts, for the drill guide, and what will end up being swapped out for the tap guide. This large wrench, that's going to allow you to tighten the holding vise over the cylinder. You see the size of that slot? I'm going to insert. What needs to happen if you're doing this in real time is you need to install the drive cam. Let's take one of the completed cylinders apart to show you the drive cam. The drive cam has to be installed. You know what, we can just use this. Yeah, we can. You have to remove the ML2000 series cam as well. You have to install the drive cam. The drive cam is already installed on this lock. Okay, so we'll just use the real cylinder. And with the drill guide plate loose, you're going to insert the cylinder into this hole, 2 spring-loaded ball bearings on either side. And really all you do is you push it in. You've got to make that drill cam sit inside of that hole, and what I do is I kind of just work it as I'm moving the plate. Now I know it's secure. At that point, I'm now basically aligned to drill. You test the operation of the key to make sure that it's smooth. The operation of the key must be smooth. It's reasonably smooth. Once you're set, you'll then take that big Allen wrench and you watch the slot that's there as I tighten the vise over the cylinder. It tightens it down. Now it's not going to move at all. Okay. At this point, you're going to tighten your drill guide down. Now I found that this drilled the holes slightly askew, like slightly, and that what I needed to really have was this drill plate as flush to the bottom of the vise as possible. Just want to align this to get it as flush as possible. Okay. A little bit of, every tool has a personality. I've got that basically flush because I need the positioning of the holes to be right in the correct, perfect location for the job. So once I've got that all secured, you're then going to come with the included number 29 bit and its stop. And you're going to set that stop using the included small Allen wrench so that you have 1.25 inches per the installation instructions to the end of the bit. So I'm a little bit long on that. Okay, 1.25 inches. Got my finger on there, and I'm going to tighten that down. We're going to check it because you don't want to drill too deep. You'll drill through the scalp front of the lock. Yeah, we're good. I mean, that's, you know, that's good. So I jumped ahead a little bit. On the manufacturer's catalog, it shows the contents. Okay, you know you've got a 29-bit with a stop. You're going to get an 832 tap with a tap handle. It's all included. This is a 29. It's a numbered size. I can tell you from drilling and tapping holes that the difference between success and potential failure, and the difference between success and having it go gloriously, is the right size drill bit. If you're doing an 832 in brass, a number 29 drill bit is the right size, because tapping that hole will be almost effortless. You're still cutting threads into a piece of architectural metal, but because that root size hole is so accurate, so correct for what you're tapping, it's a lot more labor to drill the holes than tapping the holes. Okay, so that's all the parts you're going to get. I haven't shown you, however, the tap guide, and we're going to get to that later in the video. What you'll do is you'll replace the drill guide off, put the tap guide on. It's got different bushings because it needs to accommodate the tap. And you do want the tap guide rather than trying to commando freehand it, because it really serves to keep you started straight. You want to, you'll start the hole with a little bit of force because you want to cut into it, but it becomes effortless after that. Now, that's the drill fixture. They make different extensions: 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, 1 inch, 1.25 inch. We're doing 2.25 inch cylinders. I started out with a 1.25 inch cylinder. I could have got an 1.25 inch extension and went with a 1 inch cylinder. Didn't really matter to me. You have to order the drive cam. It's a separate piece. So what you get when you order the extension is you're going to get the threaded portion and the extension driver. You're going to get the 832 machine bolts that'll screw it all together. You're going to get the 2 small cam, which is a 348 is that thread type, to hold your cam onto the back. That's a standard size. I had to look that up one time because I was doing a custom installation on some material. I was actually making an unusual keyway work on a Seagull lock. The client, it's not an unusual keyway. It's a keyway that Seagull lock doesn't offer. Believe it or not, well, not believe it or not, but a Seagull lock's going to have a Seagull keyway. There's more than one Seagull keyway, but there's one common Seagull keyway. Well, this client has a Seagull lock, wants a Seagull lock, doesn't want to get rid of it, wants to keep it. Sure, good security. A lot of people feel that it is. However, on his back door, he's got a Schlage A53 along with an old B400 series deadbolt. And on the front of his house, he put in a beautiful Baldwin Estates mortise lock that may have been an Empire trim or a Versailles. I forget the trim that he installed. And he's like, I want all of my locks on the same key, all of them. I says, okay, the easy thing to do is to get rid of the Schlage everywhere and go with the Seagull, because I can sell you a mortise cylinder that will take a Seagull. You can put that into your Baldwin lock. I can sell you a replacement composite cylinder to fit into your A53, and I can sell you one for your B400 deadbolt. Problem solved. Client said, nah, I don't want to do that. Why? And I knew why. He didn't want to pull out his beautiful Baldwin mortise cylinder out of the front of his lock. It's antique nickel. It says Baldwin. It's got the nice big Baldwin bow key blanks. Understanding what the issue was, I said to the client, okay, well then, okay, so you've got Schlage C on everything but the Seagull. You have 2 keys, or I can build you a lock that will take a Seagull lock that will take a Schlage C keyway. Double cylinder, inside, outside. So the reason I know that that's 348 is because I had to manufacture a custom, I had to remanufacture a standard mortise cylinder so that it would work inside of the odd housing of the Seagull lock, which didn't prove to be a task, except that I had to drill and tap. I had to come up with 348 screws to build my own custom driver as well. And it proved to be a very fun experience, knowing that I can do it, which means you want to put Schlage Primus on the inside of your Seagull lock, that can be done. Any sort of keyway. If it comes in a mortise cylinder, it can be done. So Major says here is a fast way to make a longer mortise cylinder when you need it. By using our extender kits and drill guide, you can make a custom length cylinder in minutes. You can do it quickly, I wouldn't say minutes. Instead of waiting months for a factory order. Months? Weeks, sure, of course, and a huge cost. Simply choose a drive cam, which is on page 2, we'll get to it, compatible with your cylinder, and install it in place of the cam. Install cylinder in our drill guide to accurately drill and tap the mounting holes for the extenders. The last step is to screw the extender in place. What could be easier? It is easy in theory. Requires a drive cam sold separately in addition to the extender kit. Choose from the chart on the following page. Note, any combination of 2 extender kits can be stacked together to make a cylinder up to 2.5 inch longer. You can definitely take, this is a 1 inch, you can definitely take 2 of these. I don't see why you couldn't take 14 of them. As long as you had a long enough 832 bolt, you're in good shape. So whatever length cylinder is not really going to be a challenge. Now, the extender kit, I explained what's going to come with it. This drive cam, the reason there are different drive cams, you have to order them separately on page 2, is because the drive cam that is necessary to fit onto the back of the cylinder is specific to the manufacturer of the cylinder. So this is part of the extender, but this needs to communicate to the drive cam. When you take the cylinder, your Kaba cylinder, you pull your cam off, put the drive cam on. Done. Forget about the drive cam. Order the drive cam. So this would be an MCE-D1. This is for a Kaba Ilco. Order yourself an MCE-D1 if you're modifying a Kaba Ilco. Take this cam off, put the drive cam on, tighten it up, it comes with screws. Then go to page 1 and order the length of the extension you need. Whatever length, okay, or whatever lengths that you need to finish the job. That will put you in the proper position to begin the preparation of what you're doing. Page 2 does show the different drive cams. It shows what a completed unit looks like, and that completed unit is most certainly just like what we have sitting here. Okay. Now, to the installation instructions. When I first saw the installation instructions coming out of the package, I said, whoa, wait a minute, what's happening here? Why is that much paper coming out as installation instructions? And I thought, well, it's really a hallmark of good quality locksmith manufacturers to use really big pictures and really big fonts. If you buy a key machine from HPC, that installation instruction is going to be written like a book like a picture book for a toddler. Okay, not a lot of words, lots of pictures, making it easy, and that is indeed the case with this. So don't be intimidated. This video moves towards, in just a bit, me using this tool for the very first time, never having used it before. I wouldn't say live on camera, but capturing it live. Page 1 is just the introduction, shows you the parts that are included. Page 2 is a review of the parts that are included that we've already touched on. Moving to page 3 is where you get into, okay, get the cylinder that you need to extend. It's that simple, not really a big deal. And what I've also done, as I said, I've already 1-bitted the cylinders because I wanted to have the locksmithing portion completed before I did the cylinder extension. So, middle of page 3, extension kit and proper drive cam needed for the modification. It's all laid out there. The only thing that you don't see are the 2 little screws to hold the drive cam on, which you probably just reuse the ones that you're taking off. remove the factory cam. Going to the top of page 4, install the drive cam, just like they said. Great. Install the drill guide plate. They call it a gray plate. It's really black. It's anodized, black anodized aluminum. On the cylinder clamp. This is the cylinder clamp. Do not tighten the mounting screws at this time. The drive cam must be installed when you're doing this. So go in order. The drive cam must be installed. It is used to center the mounting holes. So not only are these spring-loaded balls that are on the side guiding you in, but that drive cam fitting into this hole, once you know that you have smooth rotating operation, sets the conditions by which you are aligned so that when you drill through the bushings, you're putting those holes where they need to be. There are 2 ball bearing detents on the inside of the cylinder clamp. The detents will center the mortise cylinder in the clamp. We've demonstrated that. At the top of page 5, make sure the mortise cylinder bottoms on the drill guide. There should be no space between the clamp and the drill guide. And you rotate the key to make sure it moves correctly and freely, and then you basically tighten the screws down. At that point, you're ready to start drilling holes. And I may have overlapped the balance of this video, so I will terminate this here, and you're picking up to the second part of this video now. A little bit of a power outage that we had here, but we're continuing on now. So what we've needed to do was to attach the drive cam, as is called out on the top of page 4. And the drive cam will include the 2 screws, and I was actually, when the power went out, I was getting up to determine what the thread type was of this screw, and I had said it was 440, and then I second guessed myself. It's not. It's that thread type is 348 is what that is. It's not a very commonly published size. I don't think people really bump into needing to know that information often, but it is a 348. I did need to determine that data one time because in my Siegel lock project that I had mentioned earlier, there was some I needed to stack. I made my own drive cams, and I needed to stack tail pieces on top of each other, cams on top of each other, because in the Siegel lock, forgive me, in the Siegel lock, the point at which the cam actually throws the bolt member, the spring-controlled bolt member, needs to be built off. So this actually would have worked perfectly with a cam then sitting on top of here, because where the yoke was up high, it wasn't down here. So we needed to stage that off. I just basically, rather than paying for one, I just took some old Adams Wright cams and ground the tips off. Oh, the length of these screws. The overall length of that screw, we know it's 348. Its length is 0.365. 0.365 is what that is. Okay. Get that dropped in there. No need to over tighten them. Okay, so now we have all 3 of our cylinders with our plugs attached. What they want us to do is to install the drill guide plate on the cylinder clamp. This is the cylinder clamp, but do not tighten the screws. When this arrived, it was already attached. I just simply loosened, I removed them for purposes of the video. And I'm going to put them back in and just leave it loose. The drive cam must be installed at this time. It is used to center the mounting holes. Okay, that makes perfect sense. So the drive cam that's on the back of the cylinder is important to have because when we push the cylinder into the clamp, that drive plug is going to need to seat itself into that hole. And let's take a look if that's the direction in which we're going. So at the bottom of page 4, they're showing us the ball bearing detent, one on each side. Okay. There are 2 ball bearing detents inside the cylinder clamp. They are spring loaded. The detents will center the mortise cylinder in the clamp. Okay, great. Make sure the mortise cylinder bottoms on the drill guide. There should be no space between the clamp and the drill guide. They specifically told us not to tighten them. I'm going to set that. I'm going to set that just to the point where it stops. I'm not going to tighten it, as they say. Just going to leave it where it belongs. It's not tight. It just happens to be in place. Make sure the mortise cylinder bottoms into the drill guide. There should be no space between the clamp and the drill guide. Okay, so I'm going to literally place this inside of here. I'm going to center it over the ball bearings. I'm just going to push. That's what we came up with. It's not quite centered in there. That's probably why they want it not to be tightened. I'm going to loosen it a little bit. Yeah, it did get a little tight as it was being pushed on. Okay, so I kind of wiggled it around, got it to snap in place. Now it's definitely where it belongs. That drill cam, the drive cam is inside the hole of the drill plate, and you can see it's not perfectly aligned anymore. Well, that's okay for me. I just want it to be, I just want the drill plate, I want these things to be in relationship to each other is what I want. Okay. Let's loosen those screws on the drive cam a little bit. Yeah, that, you know what, I had those super tight, and now that drill fixture comes into alignment with each other. And as I tighten them, okay, it did not reposition the fixture. It did slightly, but I'm not worried about slightly. You got a lot of holes that have been drilled into things that may or may not be completely, you know, when you're gang drilling into a cylinder, you know, those into the Bible of a cylinder, or right through a mortise cylinder and then into the plug, those holes move a little bit. Once the cylinder rotates, okay, now let's back up. Make sure the mortise cylinder bottoms on the drill guide. There should be no space between the clamp and the drill guide. Okay, I've got no space. What they want us to do now is to test the cylinder to make sure that it rotates. And it does. It rotates freely. I mean, it cycles through that just fine. You can tell that the drive plug is not perfectly centered. We'll loosen those screws a little bit. Well, it certainly rotates freely. Once the cylinder rotates freely in the drill guide, tighten the two cap screws, which are these two screws. I feel like my fixture is in alignment with itself. Now I'm going to tighten them. Okay. Now it's going to say test your key again, and it doesn't turn as freely as it once did. So they're saying if it doesn't turn freely to readjust it. So I'm going to bring this, there is a sticking point in there, and I'm going to place the position of my drive cam on that sticking point, and I'm going to re-tighten the screws. Okay, it spins freely. Okay, spins freely. Just a little of adjustment as the installation instructions asked for. Now we're going to be moving on to the next page. Top of page 6. Now, tighten the mortise cylinder in the clamp unit. That's going to be the really big Allen wrench. Oh, let me turn that around so you can see it tighten over the head of the body of the mortise cylinder. And you can see it close up. now it's certainly clamped inside of there. Drill both holes with the 29 drill bit. Adjust the top, pardon me, adjust the stop on the drill bit. This is the part that we knew was going to be important. Adjust the stop on the drill bit so the hole is drilled to a depth of about 3/4 inch. Adjust the stop so it is 1.25 inches above the tip of the drill bit. Okay, so before we change anything, they want the stop so it's 3/4 inch above the tip. Where are we right now? Pardon me, 1.25 inches. Okay, we're long on that. We're a bit long. So I'm going to indeed adjust that. Looks like we were closer to 1 3/8. I'm going to loosen that screw. Hello. It's obviously not an exact science that we have to have on this. I'm going to keep my fingertip in place so that I know what I'm putting it up against. You know, and if it's a 1/16 long, it's not going to matter. The length of that cylinder, the amount of brass that's in the cylinder is certainly adequate to drill into. What I'm saying is the height of this is certainly adequate. Let's test what we've set it to. What I like to do, yeah, okay, so I'm still a 1/16 long. I am going to adjust it. What I like to do is check the positioning on my stop as I make additional holes. I've had, you know, oh, now I'm too short. I've had the risk of the stop moving on me, and then I end up drilling a hole way deeper than necessary. That's not good. If you ever wonder why you're drilling and drilling and drilling and drilling and drilling and drilling and not getting through the steel you're drilling into, make sure your drill's turning in the right direction. Still too short. The problem is when the set screw tightens again, it's on a spiral surface. Yeah, we're spot on now. Okay, so we've got 1 1/4 inch as it says. This will allow plenty of room for the tap, for you to tap to the depth needed without bottoming out. This is not a bottoming tap. I believe it's what's called a thread forming tap. Remove the drill guide from, okay, now it's time to drill. That's what we're going to do right now. We're going to get our drill and we're going to drill. Let's take a look. I always like to use a really small tool like this. I don't need a lot of torque. It's brass. The issue is I don't have a 1/4 inch shank on a number 29 bit. So I am going to use a power drill, just a typical drill. This has a clutch, and my clutch is set incredibly light. To the point where I'm probably going to have to tighten that clutch up a little bit. So at this moment, we are literally going to begin to drill. I'm going to get the hole started and likely pause the video so that we're not literally listening to this drill. Yeah, it's making immediate impact. It's immediately going into the workpiece, no doubt. It began drilling immediately. Okay, I could tell it with very little action. I was creating chips on there. Okay, so what I'll do, because I've got a drill guide, when I have this over my paper towel, I would like to collect as many of these shavings as possible. You can really tell when it starts to grab. When it starts to spin like that, I will always back it out because I know that it's got material inside of it. It's no longer drilling accurately. or effectively. And it is removing chips. I can certainly see that, as probably can you. Okay, so you get the concept that this is working, and it most assuredly is. I'm going to pause this video and I'm going to drill both of the holes, and then we're going to pick it up from there. So as I'm drilling through this, I still haven't executed the first hole. What I'm noticing is that you absolutely must pull the drill bit out in order for you to continue to make progress, because that hole very much clogs up with the shavings. And this is just partially through one of the first holes. It's going fine, but you do need to bring that out. It would be very helpful to have a much lighter tool than this, and the next time I do it, I will have a number 29 with a shank so I can use my tiny little tool. And I'm finding that I can shake this and lots of chips come out. It would be really nice if Major had an evacuation path for the chips down below. That would be an absolute improvement to this tool without, I believe, any compromise. I'm not an engineer. I know the folks over there are, but those chips need to have a place to go. You might even be able to hear them come out on the camera or on the microphone. Yeah, that's the issue with drilling, pulling all the chips out. Anyway, we're really close to where we need to be now. Okay, we're going to stop right there. Now I'm going to pause this video and I'm going to drill the other hole. So it took 2 or 3 minutes certainly to drill that hole. You know, it will take at least as much time to tap the hole, but let's get the other hole drilled, and then we'll switch out the faceplates. Now I've got both of the holes drilled down. The temperature of and I literally just stopped. The temperature of my drill bit is hardly elevated, about beyond the point where I can detect it's even warm. My stop hasn't moved at all, so I've not changed that at all. I'm going to put that aside and lay it on its side. We did certainly create a lot of shavings, and I am going to, the next step, what they're telling us, is to remove the drill guide from the cylinder clamp. Now let's take a look at the holes that we have created. Yeah. Actually not gonna remove it. I'm just gonna loosen it. I'm gonna loosen my clamp over the head of the cylinder, because all I want to do now is just pull the cylinder out. Okay, oh yeah, nice. This is good. Okay, so that came out nice. Couple of holes. They certainly appear to be drilled in the right location. Okay. Yeah, my key certainly turns. My cam is basically tight. At this point, it's going to be a matter of putting on the tap guide and then tapping the holes. Okay, so let's proceed with that. Now, what I decided to do was to continue on and just drill all of the holes rather than move to the next operation. Here's what I found: a couple of helpful tips. The installation instructions show starting the hole this way. I would do that because you have a better chance of holding the tool straight into the workpiece. However, what I would do after that point is once I had my hole basically started, I would run the bit this way because I found that gravity would help me evacuate those chips. Otherwise it would clog, and it's just, you get to a point where you're really not making any headway anymore. Testing my stop on my tool, it has indeed creeped a little bit, about a 1/16 of an inch. So 6 holes, it did creep on the last hole about a 1/16. You need to be mindful of where that is. You don't want to over drill. It'd be kind of hard to over drill in this cylinder, but heaven forbid you get to the point where you hit the end of the cylinder. A lot of chips have been created. As you would expect, that's just going to get folded up and tossed out. Now we're going to remove it from the clamp so that we can review that. The bad thing about brass shavings is a handy shavings collector doesn't work on brass. All right, let's pop this out and see what we're dealing with. That opens up nice. I'm going to loosen the screws on the drill plate because I want it to not have any hold over the cam driver, or the driver cam. And it's not taking long, maybe 10 minutes to, patiently drill those holes. I don't want to wear out the bushings that are in the drill guide at all. Got everything loose. I'm going to be able to pull that out. Okay, it will come out. Six holes are drilled. They look really nice. Okay, let's take a look and see what happens when we try to tap this now. So it says remove at the bottom of page 6. Remove the drill guide from the cylinder clamp. Do not remove the mortise cylinder. Okay, I didn't read ahead. Do not remove the mortise cylinder at this time. Okay, let's put it back. Hello. Let's clamp back in. I'm just going to repeat the process. I am going to make sure that my key rotates. And obviously it can't really walk very far. It's good. I've got the plates. We're good. All we need to do at this point is just tighten the clamp down over the body of the cylinder, because they do want us to now remove the drill guide. Remove the drill guide from the cylinder clamp. Do not remove the mortise cylinder at this time. Okay, so literally removing the screws on the drill clamp. Those two screws out. There's my drill plate. Doesn't look none the worse for wear, really. Okay. Now, top of page 7. Install the tap guide on the clamp. The cap screw should be loose to allow the guide to float. This will allow the guide to self-align. Okay. Install the tap guide on the clamp. The cap screws should be loose. Okay, so let's get the screws in. Certainly loose, and it's certainly going to float. Maybe float a little too much. Be sure to lube the tap with a cutting oil prior to tapping. With the use of the red tap guide, tap the first hole, back out frequently to clear the chips from the work. Absolutely. Going to load our 832 into our tap handle. That doesn't have to be excessively tight. Now we have to get paper towels to clean our shavings up. So even with the screws tight, that plate still floats ever so slightly. Now they want us to start tapping the work. Okay, let's start tapping the work. This is where I think it's going to make a lot of sense to have that sort of orientation. And as I rotate that, I can definitely tell that the plate moves. And I can definitely tell on my fingers that I'm cutting threads, or at least I'm initiating the process of cutting threads. I have tapped a lot of holes when making hinges into into NRP, or non-removable pin hinges. So I can tell that I'm tapping. I'm actually cutting threads. I can tell this is working. I am going to pause the video and I'm going to proceed through tapping this hole. It's been perhaps 15 seconds since I paused this video, and tapping this hole is simple. Very, very simple work. They do want you to back out to clear the chips. That's certainly not a problem. I'm going to reinsert the tap and proceed. This pause was just to say it's really easy. I mean, the size of the hole that's been drilled, the tap that's being tapped, it's clearing the threads, it's creating threads very efficiently and very easily. I've backed out the tap a couple of times in my first hole to clear out the chips, and I can tell you that you'll have to have, and I'm just really not having to put a lot of work into it. You'll have to be very deft in knowing when it's really time to stop turning, because your tap's going to hit the bottom of the hole, and I believe that I just hit the bottom of the hole. Going any further is going to ruin your work, ruin the cylinder. So I'm going to back this tap out, clear the chips out. And I do believe that based on the discoloration of my tap that I have hit far enough. But you've got to be paying a lot of attention to your palm to know, hey, this is clearly a different level of resistance that I'm getting. I'm going to start tapping the second hole in my first cylinder. And getting it started takes a little bit of force moving forward, because you need that tap to start to bite in. You can tell, you can hear it, you can feel it when it starts to actually create the threads. I've got a hole at the bottom of the tap, so some of those, those chips won't be completely compressed in their area, but I like the tapped hole to be as clean as possible. Do not try to pull the tap out of the hole until you're completely removed from the hole. You don't want to smear those initial threads that you're creating. Just putting it back down, and then I can tell where I've got some resistance. And because I've tapped holes before, I can tell in my hand that I'm, basically tapping it straight. When I remove the tap, I put it down so that I'm as straight as possible. Going to clear those chips out of there. There's not many that is obviously being created because we're just tapping a hole. Using thread cutting fluid is obviously very recommended. I didn't have any for this operation, and because my tap's pretty far in, and I'm just paying attention to make sure of when I feel that resistance really start to increase. Oh yeah. Yeah, that tells me stop. I'm going to clear this tap out. I'm going to clear the chips out. Then I'm going to run it in. I'm going to run the tap in just to make sure that I can duplicate that resistance that I felt. So I'm really finding 4 times that I need to have the tool leave the hole that I'm tapping. Get to the point where I can no longer just turn it in with my fingers. No, we're still good. We're still cutting threads. Because I can hear the tool cutting the threads. I'm going to back that out. Yeah, that tool's definitely coming out. I'm tempted to say that we're far enough, just looking at the tip of my tool. I don't want to run the risk of going too far. So let's remove the plate and let's see if we have indeed drilled the holes, tapped the holes deep enough, because we can immediately test the integrity of the work. With the 2 832 flathead machine screws that are included, with the extension, because the length of that screw, and I'm talking about that screw that's going to hold the threaded extension on, is the length of it's directly related to the, of course, to the thickness, and that proper length screw, of course, is always included. Okay, we're going to take that off. Couple of nice tapped holes, hopefully. I'm going to leave it in there. I'm going to grab my extension. I'm going to place it. Okay, we took a little bit of a phone call in there, but I've got that tightened up, and it appears to work, you know, just fine, is the bottom line. Let's get this removed, and then yeah, okay, and then inspect further what we're doing here. See, it's hard to judge the clearance that's been created on there, and the screws need to go in. They don't just fall in; they need to go in, you know, in a little bit at a time, so to speak. So let's take a look at what we're dealing with. Let's loosen our clamp. You know, and because you're not, you know, a 2 1/4 inch length mortise cylinder, because you're not going to be pushing, you're not going to have to thread into this area. You know, as long as you're really close, you're going to be, of course, really close. Okay, so before we test this, we're going to need our extension. We're going to need the piece of brass. Let's make sure that those screws are tight. Okay, they are. it appears that all fits down. Now, what happens when we thread our screws in? Okay, you can see that it's not exactly perfect at all. It's not precisely aligned. Likely what the case is going to be is, because there will certainly be a cylinder collar underneath the head of the cylinder, what I'm seeing is, to adjust that alignment, I'm seeing that the threads are cut into the side a little bit, so I can tell that the exact center to center is off ever so slightly, which is pinching it towards the top, which tells me that most likely tells me that our alignment of our holes must be absolutely flush with the bottom of the base. This may have been askew ever so slightly. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to run a drill bit through here just to widen that hole, just the amount of just the height of the thread at the most. Even though the countersunk hole is going to drive that screw back to where it should be. Let's explore that and see how that works. Okay, so what I have found is I increased the diameter of the hole in my extension by 0.30 of an inch, and I found that I brought it well into alignment, to the point where, you know, it's well aligned at this point, and I'm going to consider this a finished product. Now, I've got the screws tightened. Obviously, the locksmith's going to take them apart, but I'm happy with the accounting of the orientation of the threads. All we're going to do now is put on our ML2000, our 863 cam. This is being used in a Corbin Russwin ML2000 series lock. Didn't like having to ream that hole, not ream it, just re-drill it. There we go. Very nice clean operation now. Now we've got a 2 1/4 inch mortise cylinder for use in a Corbin Russwin ML2000 series mortise lock with a Schlage F keyway in a polished chrome finish. That's pretty slick. Didn't take a long time to do it. First time, have never done this before. I'm certainly going to continue to, I'm going to pause the camera as I drill and tap the other two to see if I can discover a better orientation of the drill plate on the fixture. I don't want to have to open that hole another 0.30. What I'm saying is I increased the inside diameter of these holes by 0.30, allowing that small amount of movement to get that piece placed exactly where I want it to be. So I'm going to chalk it up to the fact that this is the first time I've ever done this with this tool. I've certainly modified cylinders. I've never done it with this tool, but I am certainly going to argue that this is ready for prime time. Okay, cool. Let's continue on. what I had said earlier, of course, simply doesn't apply because I'm not able to, you know, I drilled all of my holes. I drilled all of my holes at one time, which now, of course, I regret doing that because I can't go back and see. Well, although I did have to change the cylinders each time, so, you know, I might get different results every time that I put these cylinders together. So I'm putting my tap guide onto my drill fixture right now, just tightening that on so I can insert my second cylinder. It's tight, it still floats. Okay. So let's put our cylinder into the clamp. Okay, it goes all the way in. I'm going to tighten the side of it. It does appear as if there might be a small amount of misalignment in there. Yeah, there might be a small amount of misalignment in there. You're not really going to be able to see it, but those holes don't line up exactly perfectly, and they're off a measurable amount. Okay, so we're just going to get to the business of tapping some holes. I'll check back. What I find is that the alignment of the drive cam alone is really nice. And I've tapped the holes in the second cylinder. Now I'm going to run its screws in. I'm going to see how close they are to being on. Screws going in. Those holes are not exactly lined up, as I might like them to otherwise be. Screws are loose. Okay, it sits down when the screws are loose. So my guess is there's a little bit of thread formation in the back side of the... Yeah, and indeed there is. A little bit of thread formation. A little bit of evidence of thread formation right at the tip of the finger there. So the screws are exiting, and they're trying to, of course, move into the tapped holes, and they're being forced askew. Okay? Although I can tell you, it doesn't feel as off as the first one. Yeah, those holes are not, they're not where they need to be exactly. That's to be sure. One screw goes in, and it's pretty happy where it is, and it's not perfect. It's pretty well aligned. It's certainly going to be that key turns in there pretty tightly, which tells me that there's a small amount of alignment problem with the plug, the drive cam that's in there. When I loosen the screw up, it still doesn't like it. Yeah, it does not. Yeah, it could be that that plug also is not residing inside of there very well. So let's get my rubber mallet. Let's take and tap our plug out. Yeah, it's actually not sitting in. It's actually sitting in there too tightly. It's just the bottom line. I have 2 cylinders left. One of these I can tell you one of these extensions is machined just a little tighter than the other. One works in one perfectly, and the other just doesn't want to as well at all. A little bit of problem with the machining on that. Whereas in the other unit, it's very smooth. It operates as it should. So we're going to have to play with the inside machining of this a little bit. Get that opened up a little bit is what we're going to need to do. Stay tuned. What I found was that a small amount of work on the wire wheel needed to just have a small amount, 10 thousandths taken off the outside of this, the circumference of this to make this fit in the drive, the extension cam into its housing so it rotates nicely, which it does now. So what we're going to do now is and then on I made the second cylinder. That one required that I opened up one of the 2 holes by 30 thousandths, and it appears to be in really good shape. That operates very smoothly. So 2 down. Going to work on the last one right now, and we're in super good shape. Here we go. Now after I buffed that cam, and it's of course not perfectly round. Little bit of metal in there that it's working loose. We're going to take that apart. I found that on the last one I didn't need to open the holes up at all, or a hole at all, 30 thousandths of an inch. So what I'll do next time that I do this is going to be, of course, doing them one at a time so I can really study how my alignment of my tapping of the holes is working. Okay, that's going to be the way to proceed, to do them one at a time, to really learn not the personality of the tool, but the best way to really align it so that it's going to put those holes. They're off 15 thousandths, I would say, but yeah, this is going to need to get cleaned out a little bit. That's not going to go to the client like that. So we're going to put that back on the wire wheel and clean that out so the transmission is operating the linkage is operating very, very cleanly, naturally. Okay. What I elected to use was just a very small file that I have. I was able to just dress off enough around the circumference of this. I mean, it's really taking off powder. and it works in there quite smoothly. Okay, so let's get this back together. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, that's good. Let's put these screws in now and see if we have to open that hole a bit. I don't think we will. Oh yeah, this is the best of all three, and they're all ready for prime time. Okay, is the key smooth? Small amount of wear on that. Obviously getting those two screws in there tightened. Got that loosened. That moves super smooth. I have a saying that someone needs to be able to come home not with all of their faculties, if you know what I mean, and their key needs to work smooth. We don't want any late night kick-ins because they couldn't get their door to open. So if it's not super smooth, it doesn't go to the job until it's super smooth. So yeah, I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to do two more. I'm going to go around the circumference of the driver 2 more times with my very fine file. I'm just going to put that on my workbench here. And I've probably gone around 4 times. So I think the bottom line is this will prove to be an acceptable method by which to be able to put together a cylinder of a custom length and do so in just the amount of shop time on the bench that you need to do it, which is not insignificant. Okay, if you're doing this work, you need to charge for it. The parts are not cheap. The labor is not cheap. A custom-made Schlage cylinder, 2 1/4 inch long, and an F keyway. The setup charge alone is going to be hundreds of dollars. I don't quote me on that. I don't recall, but we all know it's not insignificant. And it's really just it's a small revolution of the screw that's just tightening it down. So we'll take off a little bit more, and we'll have some final conclusions. So there is a link below this video to the product catalog for the major 2-page section of their full line catalog that applies to what it is that we're working on. There's also a factory original photograph. There is also the installation instructions. And then there was an image that I put together of all of the components prior to starting the project. Unfortunately, the entire initial part of the project video became a corrupted file with a power outage that occurred here. So I'm going to reshoot the intro to this aspect. I found on that third cylinder that I did have to open up both of the holes by 30 thousandths in my threaded extension, and at that point, super smooth. We'll see on repeated attempts if we can figure out. So obviously, what I'm finding is that I think the holes were sitting a little bit too high in the template. So next time I do that, I'm going to draw that plate. Make sure it's flush to the bottom of that. Putting on our ML2000 Corbin Russwin compatible cam now on our third cylinder. Now what I would recommend, very smooth, 3 2¼ inch 26 finish Schlage F series, Schlage F keyway. What I would recommend is after the locksmith pins the material, I would recommend thread lock. You know, typical thread sealant on these bolts down in here. And I'm going to put a note in the order that I recommend that they do that. It's just mechanically fastened. It would be very recommended to have some thread sealant when I've done other cylinders. If I was pinning these permanently, I would be putting that thread lock in there already, is what I would be doing. Now, conclusions. So my conclusion on the MCE-100 Mortise cylinder drill guide is that it is certainly a tool worthwhile. Even with having a tool that gives you the fixturing, there was still some reworking to do after the fact. The mere concept of doing it without the fixture, without the positioning of the two holes initially, would not really, it's not fathomable to do it without the guide. Learning that if the hole is off 15 thousandths on either side, which is really the bottom line, it's not going to work. So take a 32nd of an inch, okay, and divide that in half, a 64th. That's what we're dealing with. So the holes can't be off. Can they be off? I suppose. But as you're threading the cylinder in, this is going to be doing a concentric, you know, working as you're threading it in. So this alignment needs to be spot on. Now what I had considered doing is obtaining a, and I'm going to try it at some point, is obtaining a cash box nut, a threaded ring that will be that is used to hold a mortise cylinder into a cash box, into an exit device trim, and hoping that I can get both of these units threaded into it to the point where I can hold them together. Then I can start the hole using this as the template itself. That's what I'm going to try at some point in the future. But this all works really well. I would recommend that you give it a go. It's good quality material. Major, their full-line catalog is obscene with the amount of the breadth of available locksmithing tools. I don't think a lot of people know of them. I think people even that call themselves, not call themselves locksmiths, but operate as locksmiths, may not be aware of some of the things that they do. So I take a look at that full-line catalog. I have a couple of their tools, and it's because nobody else does. They have a lot of security hardware as well. If you have any questions on the major MCE-100 Mortise Cylinder Drill Guide and how to build custom cylinders, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.